Dear listeners, my name is Olusola Adegbonmire, and I've been asked to speak today about putting affairs in order as it relates to dementia and the elderly. I want to start by saying I am not just speaking to the real elderly who already have dementia. I'm also speaking to the young elderly who most likely do not have dementia, but are dealing with parents and elderly uncles and aunts who do. There's a particular age you get to that you have, a lot of elderly family who may or may not have dementia. I'm also speaking to the young elderly who do not have dementia. They may not know anyone who does, but then in another 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, they may find themselves in that position. Although we all pray that we don't, let us at least know what to do at that time or how to even advise other people who may find themselves in that position. And that's why we're doing this. So, well, we probably all have an idea of what dementia is. I'm not a doctor, so I can't give you any medical definition, but I will just speak as a lawyer and as someone who has dealt with the elderly who have dementia. And so putting it in the layman's way, dementia is a memory loss ailment that affects short-term memory amongst other things. This means that people often forget what they heard just a few minutes ago, but then they may sometimes remember what they heard or they learned 10 years ago. And that is a description that I have also learned from experience and interaction with dementia patients. So you just have a discussion with them and they're asking you the same question and you're answering it and they're asking you the same question again and again and again in the same conversation. To someone who does not know anything about dementia, it's a little bit odd. You introduce yourself to someone, so what's your name? And then you say your name. Oh, what's your name? It's because they have a problem with short-term memory. So this short-term memory loss then makes dementia patients very vulnerable. It makes them vulnerable to people and to their immediate environment. And this is why it is absolutely essential to put the affairs of a dementia patient in order. For those who are not quite there yet, they can begin to put their affairs in order by themselves. But for those who have fully blown dementia, their children need to start putting their affairs in order. I mean, a lot of these elderly people, some of them do not have children around them. Some of them, their children are very far away. Their children are abroad. And yet they have to have things in order. And so these parents, these children who are abroad often pay a lot of money to house helps and to maybe distant family to help them look after their parents and their loved ones. But then we leave these elderly people at the mercy of these paid helps. And some of them are not very kind people, So, of course, this is not to say we should rush all our elderly parents, maybe off to an old people's home where at least they are in a structured environment. No. But we can begin to put affairs in place. And why do I say they are vulnerable? These people sometimes, sadly, take advantage of them. One, they take advantage of them financially, and they abuse them financially. You hear, oh, daddy, we need 10,000 to pay for electricity bills, and then daddy gives them the money, or he writes a check, and then they come 10 minutes later and say, daddy, we need 10,000 to pay the electricity bill, and daddy gives them 10,000, and they can come like 10 times in 1 hour, every 6 minutes, and they will give them the money again and again and again. Why? Because short-term memory is what is affected. And so the person giving money does not remember that a few minutes ago he gave money, and a few minutes ago he gave money. And that's what makes them so vulnerable and painful. Some people even physically abuse these elderly people, and so we really need to make an arrangement for them. So how can we put these affairs in order, especially financial affairs? And that's what I'm going to be looking at today, because they get patients with dementia to just do all kinds of things, to write checks, to give them money over and over again, to transfer shares to them, to, all kinds of things. So we need to make sure that they do not take advantage of our elderly parents. They do not take advantage of us. We can put things in place before that time. So yes, what do we do? Several things. One, we always talk about making a will, making a will, making a will. One, it's best to make a will while there is still a good amount of lucidity, because a will that is made by a person with full-blown dementia could easily be challenged. It is not that a person with dementia cannot make a will at all, but then it would have to be shown that the person who made that will had enough mental capacity to understand the nature and the implications of the dispositions that they are making. It must be clear that they have not been influenced by anybody. And so the earlier one has full mental capacity to make a will, the better. A person who has full-blown dementia may make a will and actually give what he wants, but somebody who does not like that will can easily challenge it and show that, oh, at this point in time when this will was made, this person did not have mental capacity. And a will, it's important that one has a will and one has provisions for estate planning. So the best thing is that make a plan to put your estate in order after you have gone now. Don't leave it till tomorrow. That's one, making a will. Two, arrange formal and structured assistance with regards to finances. Like I said, the main thing I'm looking at today is how do we put the affairs together, especially with finances. Finances covers money in the bank, property, shares, all kinds of things, bonds, stocks, So number two, apart from making a will, the will is for after the person has gone, but even while the person is alive, let us make a formal and structured assistance with regards to finances. What do I mean by this? Like I said earlier, a person who has dementia and suffers from short-term memory loss could be made to write the same check 10 times within an hour, or just maybe write checks or transfer money for the caregiver at the caregiver's whims and caprices, because he or she knows that the patient does not remember having written the same check just 10 minutes ago or just 1 day ago. And so the caregiver can get up to all kinds of mischief, always coming, mommy, we need money, daddy, we need money, and collecting money over and over again. And of course, it doesn't take much time for the caregiver to realize that, oh, the patient is not remembering. So they take advantage. So because we want to do that, the patient can hand over power over the finances to a loved one. The simplest way to do this is to create and give a power of attorney to a child or to a trusted ward, who then is able to manage the finances of the patient. When the patient is not yet totally forgetting everything, you can still convince the patient that, oh, daddy, I think it's time, I think you should make a power of attorney, let me help you. many parents agree if you tell them, you know how to handle your parents. So get them to give you a power of attorney to manage their finances. Once there is such a power of attorney, not a penny can then leave the account of the patient without the said child or ward knowing about it. In that case, once such an arrangement is made, it's also given to the bank. The bank is instructed. So no transfer can be made. And if they need money, then the attorney, the person who has been given the power, can transfer money as and when needed to the caregiver at home. Fortunately, everything is so computerized now, everything is so centralized. You can be in England and be running an account in your hometown, in your village. You can be making transfers to the caregivers. Anytime the caregiver needs money, the caregiver can send you a WhatsApp message, you need money, or you can agree, we'll give money every month. But everything comes, even though it's coming from daddy's account, but it's coming from you. And so you know what is going in and out. Also, still with regards to finances, a power of attorney can be made with regards to shares and stocks, so that unscrupulous stockbrokers cannot deal with the stocks and shares of the patient. An unscrupulous stockbroker who understands what is happening, maybe because he was stockbroker to daddy when daddy was, quite with it, he can transfer shares to himself, he can sell shares and so on. So, but once the power of attorney has been given to somebody else, then they need that person to sign off before any stocks and shares can be sold. So a power of attorney works for that. Also, with regards to properties belonging to the patient, a power of attorney should be given with respect to properties for collection of rent, repair of buildings. You need to arrange that. It's not just anybody who goes there. I knew of a case where it was just someone like a caregiver who used to go to the old woman's properties and collect rent, and nobody knew that the rent was being collected. So a power of attorney should be given. And of course, when you give a power of attorney as well, you let all the tenants in those houses know that this is the new instruction, this is the person who should be paid. The person who is given the power of attorney can then even delegate collection of rents to somebody else. But at least you will know that you have control over how rents are being collected. Of course, when you then need money to make repairs, you can draw from the rents collected and then use it to make the repairs. And of course, if you even want to sell, you can have a power of attorney that allows decisions to be made concerning sale. Although this type of power of attorney is different, because the power of attorney that allows for sale and not just collection of rents has to be registered at the lands registry. Why this may be helpful is because if there is a situation that calls for a lot of money, it might be a sickness situation, but you need a lot of money. You need to maybe fly the patient abroad and so on. Sometimes what you have is the property to sell. So if you have a power of attorney that allows you to sell, that would also help. Because I always say that it's not just to have money when you want to bury a person. You need to have money when a person is also ill. So if you want to have a power of attorney that allows for sale, that can also be done. The only thing is that a person has to be careful. If you have a power of attorney given to only one person that allows for sale, you don't want a situation where that one child or that one ward can then take advantage and sell the property behind all the other children. So maybe sometimes just a power of attorney for collection of rent. So these are things that can happen. So everything has its advantages and disadvantages. When it comes to bank accounts, an alternative option apart from the power of attorney is to have one child set up as a co-signatory to the account and the signature A. And so you can have a situation with the bank where you say, if signature A's signature is not on the check, they must not honor it. So daddy and signature A must always sign, just to make sure that that other person knows. Or sometimes the one other person has the token and one person has authorization to make transfers. In that case, sometimes you need a token to confirm a transfer. So that way, one person can make transfers, but the other person will always get an alert when money has been transferred. So if too much money is being transferred, all of a sudden there's a ping, 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 debit, there's a problem. But all these things are just to set up some structure, some control over the affairs of the dementia patient. But of course, like I also said, for the property, you have to be careful. A challenge is that The child may go on running the account to the exclusion of other siblings at the demise of the said parents, if you just put that one child there. So, one has to consider that as well. Then we're talking about all these are things that the patient himself can sign. He can sign the power of attorney. He can go to the bank and set up a bank account and sign. Sometimes the patient has gone past that stage when he has the capacity to make a power of attorney. He can't even make a power of attorney if he doesn't understand anything that anybody is talking about. He cannot add a child as a co-signatory to the account. What happens then? At this point, the child or the ward will need to apply to the court for power to manage the affairs of the patient. This application will be made to the High Court, and this is the same all over the world. You make an application to the High Court for like guardianship of the patient. And the judge, after considering all the documentary evidence before it, including evidence to show that the patient has dementia, so you need to bring medical reports to the court. When the court has considered all the evidence, it would grant power to the applicant. The applicant would be a child. It would grant power to the child to take over managing all the affairs of the parents. Of course, this is a more demanding process. It entails going to court, standing before a court, putting many documents before the court. You need to get a lawyer. And so this might be a bit more expensive and a bit more time consuming. So writing a power of attorney is best, which can be done when the patient is still, able to do it. Of course, both things, whether you go to court to ask for an order or you write a power of attorney, both things are best done by a lawyer. Let the lawyer write a power of attorney for you. Of course, if you're going to court, the lawyer has to go to court for you. And so these are just some of the ways. I know that I'm already running out of time, but these are just some of the ways the affairs of a dementia patient can be put in order. And it is important we put some of these or any of these in place as soon as we notice that, it seems as if daddy is losing his memory. It seems as if mom is losing his memory. It doesn't just happen overnight. Oftentimes you see it gradually happening. So once you notice it is happening, it's best to start putting these things in place as quickly as possible. I have two questions that have been asked of me, and I'm just going to quickly answer them. Like I said, I know I have run out of time, but please let me answer the questions. The first question I have is, are there any specific laws or regulations that protect the elderly and of vulnerable persons, especially those living with dementia in Nigeria or in Lagos, or even across Africa if it's something that I am aware of, or even, across any part of the continent? And so my answer is that I am aware that Nigeria now has a national policy on aging for older persons in Nigeria. It's a recent thing, so I've not been able to lay my hands on the policy, but I'm looking for it. So being a national policy, it will definitely take care of protecting the rights of the aged, but in a general way, not necessarily only for those with dementia. But in my research about other countries, I found that a few African countries have national policies on aging. So I'm happy that Nigeria is now one of them. So I'll just give two examples. I have several, like 10 or 12. So South Africa has an Older Persons Act of 2006, which talks about all the different ways you have to protect an older person. Ghana has a national policy on older people since 2009, Mozambique, Uganda, Tanzania, Zimbabwe, Kenya, Ethiopia, Malawi, and thank God Nigeria now has its own 2021. But apart from that, we find out that some states, like Lagos State, when Babatunde Fashola was the governor, he made treatment free for the elderly in Lagos State government hospitals. And Lagos State has really been in the forefront too in taking care of the elderly. They have like an elderly clinic in the general hospital in Ikeja, and maybe they have in some other places. But they really celebrate the elderly and they give them free treatment. Maybe they may not be able to afford all the drugs the elderly need, but at least it's a step in the right direction. I'm also very proud to talk about my own hometown, Ilesha, which has built an elderly center, a geriatric center. And I think it's one of the best. I think it's one of the few. I think there are only 2 in Nigeria, but that one is a new one. It's a beautiful, big place. It's a geriatric center only for treatment of the elderly. This was actually done by private contribution of all the Jesha families. Let me brag that they asked all families in Ilesha to contribute 1 million each. So each family of maybe 10, 100 of people, everybody in each family, wide family, home and abroad, everybody raised 1 million per family. And I think we're able to raise maybe about between 600 million and 1 billion. And it's a beautiful structure. It's up and running. And it's the geriatric center. I've passed by, I've been there myself, and I'm so proud to see how it's being run. So in different states, I think in Ibadan too, they have a geriatric center. So in some states in Nigeria, great work is going on for the elderly. Like a geriatrician once told me, he said the problem with the elderly is that the people who should put the policies in place are young and they don't understand the problems of the elderly. When you are 21, 25, 40, you don't really understand the challenges that face the 80-year-olds. By the time you are getting to 70, even 60, 70, 80, you are too old to do anything in the system. You're out of the system. By the time you're 70, you're out of the system. You can't be governor, you are really out of the system. By the time you're 80, you are not doing much. So those who should be putting the plans in place don't understand the challenges of the elderly. And by the time they are elderly, they can't do much at that time. So, it's great from Ilesha. It's a big, lovely place, the geriatric center. So some states are doing great work in Nigeria for the geriatrics. And I think that as one state does, another state hears, because this is something we did with our own private funds as Ijisha people. The governor was so proud, he came to open the place, but we did it ourselves. And I'm proud of myself too. So the second question is, what is the first step for someone who would like to put a power of attorney or any other aspect of their legal affairs in order? Do they just simply make an appointment with a law firm to see a lawyer and then take things from there? Like I said when I was speaking, you need to see a lawyer. But before you go to the lawyer, I think the first thing you need to do is put a list in place of the assets that need to be taken care of. Also, ask from the patient their medical wishes. What do they want? Some people say, look, I don't want you to keep me for too long. If anything happens, just let me go. Some people will tell you, I want to be buried quickly. And so when we write wills, for me, when I write a will, apart from the will, we have what we call a letter of wishes. So the letter of wishes is something we do separate from the will, because if you put the burial wishes in the will, I find out that most people, not only in Nigeria, but all over the world, they bury the person before they read the will. So you can imagine you've buried a man in Lagos and then you open his will and it says, I want to be buried in Ilesha. Of course, it's too late. So we put a letter of wishes separate from the will and we give to a few trusted people in the family so that they all have that same information saying, I want to be buried in Ilesha, before they read the will, when the burial, and you put all the things you want for the burial. So put all your assets together. I mean, that's for burial, but more importantly, we're talking about finances. Put all your assets in order. Where are the banks where you have an account? Where are your houses? What shares do you have? What deposits, fixed deposits do you have? What dorm accounts do you have? Which banks abroad do you have money? Which properties do you have abroad? Put all these assets together. Let there be a good chat between the parents, who is the patient, and the child or the ward, or between that patient or that dementia patient. When he's still quite lucid, he can have that discussion himself with his lawyer. So when you have all that and the lawyer or the child who is going to do the work for the parents has all that information, then you can sit with the lawyer and start. Now, sometimes the patient is even past that stage with the child. The patient can no more even identify the bank accounts, the properties. In that case, what I always advise is go into the house and look for anything you can look for that would help you to know what the parent has. Some parents, they never really talk, they just keep things. And then it's not only because they don't talk, it's because they've lived far away from the children. So at that stage, you have to come into the house, look for checkbooks, look for tenancy agreements, look for certificate of occupancies, look for share certificates, rental agreements, just look for anything in the house which may help you identify the patient's properties, real property, money, everything. And then have all these things. And with all these things, you can then go and have a robust discussion with the lawyer who is going to help to prepare a power of attorney if the person can still sign, or help to apply for an order from court to manage the patient's affairs. I'm going to stop here because I've taken so much more time than I'm allowed to, but I hope that you will remember all what I've said. Of course, you need to put medical processes in place as well, but that is for the geriatrician, not the lawyer, to tell us. And so in closing, I want to leave us with two quotes. The first quote says, "I encourage readers, particularly my fellow baby boomers, not only to make their wishes and goals clear to friends and families, but also to become advocates for better care in the broader community." That was said by Ellen Rand. And another one, and this I love so much because it's what I say all the time, maybe not in this way, but this one says, "To care for those who once cared for us is one of the highest honors." This was said by Tia Walker. I'm putting my own words. I always say, my parents took care of me when I was small and I couldn't do anything for myself. And I think it would be an honor for me to be able to help them and look after them if they find themselves in this situation. Thank you very much.
Unavyonitazama baby, unavyonipapasa baby,